Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the studios of Grafton Community Television, located at 26 Providence Road. We have the honor of having a guest this afternoon. He is Congressman Jim McGovern. He represents the 2nd District of Massachusetts. Thank you for coming in to see us today.
Happy to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you in. This is your first visit here.
Yes, it's a great studio.
This is, we're very proud of it. We're very proud of it. Glad to share it with you. So why don't we get started? We have a list of 5 questions. And I noticed on your website you recently urged the President to convene a national hunger conference. Right. What were some of the goals you were hoping that conference would accomplish?
Well, we live in the richest country in the history of the world, and we have over 40 million people who are hungry or food insecure. You know, they defy stereotypes. I mean, we have people who are homeless who are hungry, but we have people who work who are hungry. The majority of people on SNAP, for example, earn so little they still qualify for the benefit. We have kids who go to school who haven't eaten all weekend. We have senior citizens that end up in emergency rooms because they're taking their medication on an empty stomach. So this is a big problem, and it's been a problem for a while. And I tell people that hunger is a political condition. We have the money, we have the food, we have the infrastructure to solve it. What's missing is the political will. And so I think a White House conference can help us bring everybody who needs to be at the table to the table, and we can develop a holistic plan so we can solve it. We don't have a plan to end hunger in this country. We manage it. The last time we ever had a White House conference on this issue was 52 years ago. Wow. When Richard Nixon was president. But that conference resulted in the formation of the WIC program, Women's, Infants, and Children. It resulted in the modern day SNAP program. It focused more attention on school nutrition. So, you know, and the final thing I'll say is that hunger is very costly. You know, poor nutrition, lack of access to food results in all kinds of healthcare costs that quite frankly could be avoided. So let's just do this, and I think this is the way to get it done.
So it's fair to say that if it's a political issue, it's probably a money issue.
Yeah, right, but I would say...
Because we have food.
Right, we have food. And, you know, and so part of it's a money issue, but I would argue that getting it right and investing in good nutrition for everybody will save you money in the long run. I mean, kids who go to school who are hungry don't learn. So how do you quantify the lost learning opportunities? You have workers who are less productive in the workplace because they're going without food. Avoidable medical costs. I mentioned senior citizens who take their pills on an empty stomach, end up in the emergency room, or you know, people not having access to nutrition, good nutritious food, end up with diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, a whole bunch of other stuff. So, you know, look, if you're not interested in improving the quality of people's lives or preventing human suffering, and all you're interested in is the bottom line, you ought to be with us on this, because this will save money for our entire government and our entire system over a period of time.
So it snowballs, and once it gets downhill.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, my grandmother used to tell me when I was growing up, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. It used to annoy me. I wish she was still alive so I could say you were right. I mean, it's true, right? And, you know, the bottom line is that, you know, we have people who live in neighborhoods where there are no grocery stores, you know, where they have to rely on these little corner stores which don't have fresh produce for them to purchase. You know, we did a hearing in Washington the other day about hunger on college campuses. No one ever thinks a college student might be hungry.
Sure.
Bottom line is, it is a real problem, and a lot of our community colleges are taking the lead to try to combat it. But you know, it's not just the public colleges, but the private colleges are experiencing hunger among students. So look, there are lots of models that we can replicate nationwide to deal with this problem more holistically and effectively. Let's learn from what works, and then let's get an all-of-government approach together to respond to it. And some of it, we're going to ask the private sector to play a role, the nonprofit sector, the faith-based community. But look, again, living in a country as rich as ours, the idea that close to 40 million people don't know where their next meal is going to come from, we all should be ashamed about that, and we can fix it.
Agreed. So would you tell us a little bit about the Thrifty Food Plan, and what are the guidelines for that plan?
So the Thrifty Food Plan is basically what the United States Department of Agriculture uses to figure out what the SNAP benefit is. The SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which used to be known as food stamps. But basically, how much do we need to invest to make sure somebody has access to a healthy and nutritious meal? The last time we adjusted the calculation for SNAP benefits, or the Thrifty Food Plan, was 45 years ago. So nothing has changed in 45 years. And the average SNAP benefit is $1.40 per person per meal. Now, my Dunkin' Donuts coffee this morning cost more than $1.40. What the Biden administration did is they added about $1.19 more a day to help people be able to afford nutritious food. So it's still a very, very modest and small benefit, but that extra $1.19 will help people be able to make better choices for their families. Some people have criticized that by saying, you know, people should go just get a job. Again, the majority of people who are on food assistance work.
Are employed, yeah.
They earn so little they still qualify for the benefit. So maybe we should ask some of these employers to pay them a little more, because some of the people who pay low wages are companies that make a lot of profit, and they can maybe spread a little bit of that wealth more amongst their employees. But in the meantime, those working people need help. And the majority of people on SNAP are senior citizens and children. And we want to make sure our senior citizens and our children have access to adequate nutrition.
So do you think that and I'll use the broad brush, when you think, when Washington puts a plan in place, it's basically, well, we took care of that, and then we end up, like you said, 45 years down the road, no one's taking a closer look.
Right. So the problem when you tackle an issue like hunger, so you come to Congress, the Agriculture Committee deals with SNAP. School feeding falls under the Education and Labor Committee. Anything health related falls under the Energy and Commerce Committee. Anything revenue related falls under the Ways and Means Committee. So the topic doesn't fall neatly under one committee. I chair the Rules Committee. We have no jurisdictional constraints, so we have begun a series of hearings and site visits and conversations, you know, that include everybody, so we can look at this more holistically. But one of the problems has been is that, you know, Washington is not very good at solving big problems because it requires getting everybody in a room together, everybody at the same table. I think the White House, the power and the gravitas of the president, can bring everybody together, including everybody in his administration. You know, I've been meeting with cabinet officials one at a time. I met with the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. I said, I need you to get on board in supporting this conference. He says, well, I'm the Secretary of Transportation. What do I have to do with hunger? Well, people who live in food deserts or people who live in rural areas where we can't get them the food, transportation is key. You know, I was in Arizona. I went to visit this company called Neuro. If you might see this on TV, the Domino's ads for Domino's Pizza, they have this kind of unmanned vehicle that delivers pizzas to people.
Sure.
They want to figure out how they can use their vehicles to deliver food to people in need. Refrigerated trucks are also under transportation. I met with the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, said the same thing. She said, what can I do? I said, one, energy, fossil fuels, we got to deal with the climate crisis because that is impacting our farmers. But beyond that, utility costs. You know, we live in Massachusetts. We get cold winters. Heating bills are high. That digs into your food budget. You live in the West Coast, it's hot. Well, you know, you pay a lot for your air conditioning. So you can play a role, but everybody can play a role. I met with the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Dennis McDonough, and I was telling him about the high rates of hunger amongst our veterans. These are people who put their lives on the line for our country and they don't know where the next meal is going to come from.
Sure.
Shame on us for not figuring that out. We have to help them out. And I've talked to the Secretary of Defense about the high rate of hunger amongst active duty military families. You enter the military, you know, in the very beginning, you know, you get, you know, you may get a housing allowance, but that housing allowance counts as your overall income, which means you're ineligible for SNAP. So around most of our military bases in this country, there are food banks and food pantries because a lot of the active duty service men and women need to rely on that. Well, if you're going to serve our country, we ought to pay you enough so you don't need to be
Right.
on SNAP, or we ought to
Make sure you get 3 squares a day.
Right, or we ought to not count your housing allowance, against your overall income, so you can qualify for SNAP. And one of the challenges for active duty service members is that if you have a spouse, he or she probably will have a difficult time finding a job in where you're deployed, because you'll only be there for a while.
Right.
So I'm not going to hire you if I know you're going to be gone
Yeah.
in a short while. So it's even complicated. But here's the deal. It's all solvable. And we just have to have the political will to solve it. And we also have to understand the important role that our farmers play in all of this. I have a district that runs from here out to the Pioneer Valley, out to Northampton and Amherst. I've got over 2,000 farms in my congressional district. They're not mega farms, they're small and medium-sized farms, but they are all important to our economy, and they are all growing incredible, nutritious food for all of us to consume. We want to make sure that everybody has access to that, and our farmers have been really helpful in taking SNAP dollars for what they grow. We now have a program here in Massachusetts called the Healthy Incentives Program, in which if you're a SNAP recipient and you go to a farmer's market, you can get double your SNAP dollars go double for if you buy fresh fruits and vegetables. So all of this is positive, but let's come together and actually solve this big problem once and for all, and we could be a model for the rest of the world.
Amen. So recently, we received an award from Mass Edco totaling $113 million from the Department of Education. What is Mass Edco? What's that money used for?
Well, I think I'm not sure what that money is. I'm not sure what that specific grant is, to be honest with you. But there's been a lot of federal money that has come to Grafton and to every single city and town in Massachusetts and across the country to help deal with some of the costs that are related to help cover some of the education costs, in some of our communities, because obviously the pandemic has had an impact. There have been added expenses, and we've had to revenues coming into cities and towns have been depleted. So a lot of that has gone toward dealing with that. Some of it has also gone to helping better connect, broadband and the internet to some of our communities. We learned during the pandemic that not all of our communities have the same access to the internet as some do in more urban areas. It was more difficult for some students to be able to learn remotely because of that. And we needed to be doing that anyway, because more and more businesses are relying on the internet to do their business. So I think that may have, I'm not quite sure what that one grant falls into, but anyway, lots and lots of federal money has come to our cities and towns and to our state to help deal with some of our education needs and our internet needs as well.
Would you mind sharing some of your experiences from January 6th?
Yeah, so on January 6th, I was on the floor, fulfilling our constitutional duty to certify the Electoral College results. We do that every 4 years. And Speaker Pelosi was in the chair, and someone called her away, and she asked me if I could take over, presiding over the House. I've done that 1,000,000 times. So I thought nothing of it. None of us had TVs. We were in session, so we were just doing what we were supposed to be doing. And she left and said, "I'll be right back." And she left her phone there. And but she didn't know, and I didn't know at the time, that when she walked out, she was whisked away to a safe location. My daughter was texting me, and I was trying to be discreet about looking at it because I'm in the chair. But she was like, "Where are you?" And I told her I was in the House chamber. "Why are you there?" I said, "Well, because I'm presiding over the proceedings." "Well, why?" And I couldn't quite understand what she was getting at. I said, I can't look at this now. I have to take care of, overseeing the House. And then I heard some some noise coming from outside the chamber, and I just assumed maybe it was one or two people that may be running through the corridors of the Capitol screaming, because it's a cavernous building. When you scream, it echoes.
Sure.
I had no idea that it was as many people as it was. I adjourned the House briefly, and then I brought us back into session, and then I was told by a Capitol Police officer, you need to close the session because it's no longer safe to be here. And at that time, I had to make, I ended the session. I had to explain to everybody who was in the chamber that we were going to need to evacuate, but we did not have an evacuation plan. And we had to wait about 20 minutes to be able to figure that out. I was then instructed to tell people to take their gas mask, which was under their chairs, with them, and to exit through this, what we call the Speakers Gallery, which is a little area right off the House floor with portraits of former speakers of the House. You can enter it two different ways, but there are doors that are glass from the middle way up. And so I began to instruct people on how to leave, and again, I didn't really appreciate what was really happening outside. So I was essentially the last person off the House floor, and when I walked into the speaker's lobby, just about maybe 10 feet from where I was one of the doors, and there was this mob that had gathered outside the door, and there were 3 Capitol Hill police officers in between the mob and the glass door, and they were overwhelmed by the mob, and people began to bang with their fists on the glass, and that one guy shattered it. We had a little bit of a backlog of people trying to leave, so I had to wait, and I said to one of the staff people that was next to me that I don't think these people are here to protest. They're here to, or make a statement, they're here to hurt us. I mean, they're destroying this building. And I felt a great sadness and anger at the time, because the United States Capitol is a place that means an awful lot to me, not because I've just worked there as a member of Congress. I worked there as a staffer. I met my wife there. I mean, I revere the history of that building, and it's a citadel of democracy. And I couldn't believe what was happening, and I couldn't believe the disrespect for the Capitol Police, but for this historic building, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And it finally, as I was able to leave, they breached the space, and that's when this woman was shot by Capitol Police, and then that crowd dispersed. I don't know what would have happened, to be honest with you, if they had gotten to any of us. I mean, people died that day. There were over 1,000 injuries that day, and I think they would have killed many of us. I think what I thought was going to happen after this attack, and it was a domestic terrorist attack, was that similar to September 11th, after we were attacked by terrorists that day. I mean, everybody came together that day. The whole country came together, but Democrats and Republicans came together and stood on the steps as one. And I thought that was going to happen this time. It didn't. Unfortunately, people continue to push this conspiracy theory and question the legitimate results. And we've seen things just become more polarized. And I worry about our democracy. I worry about our democratic institutions, and I worry about the conspiracy theories that are online that people are buying into, and it's very, very, very dangerous. I never thought I would have to worry about our democracy, but it is fragile, and we have to fight to protect it.
Right.
And this is not about Democrats or Republicans. It's about Americans.
Yeah.
Right? And I see what's happening around the world, that democracies are moving toward autocracies. And I don't want that to happen here. And so I have very strong feelings about that day, because I was there, and I will never forget it. But when I looked into the eyes of those people trying to get at us, if you would have asked me to define what hate looks like, it was looking into their eyes. I mean, I don't know what the people were thinking, But this, this was the first time the United States Capitol had been breached in such a way since 1890. And I get emotional about it because it still seems so very, very real to me, and I'm frustrated that I have some colleagues who say it didn't happen. Well, I was there, right? So,
Well, you're right to be emotional, and thankfully everybody made it out safely. Finally, what does the future hold for us as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
look, I mean, we ought to listen to the doctors and to the scientists. I mean, that's, but you can go online and you can find a conspiracy theory that will say that if you get injected with a vaccine, that there's a chip that's being put into your body so you can be monitored, or that, or that people are dying en masse.
Right.
The people who are dying are the people who are not getting vaccinated. Now, there may be some rare cases, where there are medical exemptions, but, but people who think that this is a political thing, I mean, give me a break. I mean, I remind people that Fox News requires all of their employees to be vaccinated, yet they put people on TV who preach these anti-vax messages. But I talked to Eric Dixon, the head of UMass Memorial Hospital. I mean, they are right now postponing cancer operations and heart operations because they don't have the capacity. I mean, if we all listened to the medical experts and the scientists and we followed the directions, we got vaccinated, we masked when it was appropriate, then we could control this and end this pandemic once and for all. The danger of people not being vaccinated is not just that people will die unnecessarily, but that the disease will continue to mutate. And it may mutate to the point where the vaccine that we currently have is useless. So just do the right thing. I don't get, this is not about politics, it's about saving your life and the life of your family. And the FDA has approved these vaccines, so that excuse is now gone. To my friends who support Donald Trump, he and his wife have been vaccinated, all of his kids have been vaccinated. If they can get vaccinated, you should get vaccinated. But it shouldn't be about Trump or Biden or Hillary Clinton or anything. It should be about, we ought to do what the medical experts tell us to do. And I'm not a doctor, I didn't go to medical school, but I listened to the people that did.
Right.
And they tell us to get vaccinated. So I hope everybody who's watching this today will, if you haven't been vaccinated, please listen to the science and get vaccinated.
Okay. I want to invite you to take a moment to talk to the people of Grafton, and that's your camera over there. Take it away.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for the time to be with you today. Look, I've had the privilege of representing Grafton in the 2nd Congressional District for many, many years. It's one of the high privileges and honors of my life. But I'm also want to remind everybody that I'm your representative, whether you agree with me on my politics or not, and if my office could be of any help to you, please give us a call at 508-831-7356. We do everything from help people with passports to military academy appointments to if you have a problem with the IRS or small business or the Veterans Administration, whatever it is. People have called us looking for a good furniture store. We try to be helpful to everybody. But to me, public service is about helping people. And that's, every morning I wake up, that's what I try to do. Who can we help in this community? How can we make our country better? How can we make the world a better place? So again, thank you for your confidence and giving me the opportunity to serve you. I look forward to continuing to work with you in the days and weeks and months ahead.
Okay. It's been an honor to have in studio Congressman Jim McGovern, and we hope you'll come back and see us
Anytime.
again. It would be a pleasure to have you
It's
back.
great to be with you.
Same here.
Thank you.
On behalf of everyone here at Grafton Community Television, thank you for watching. I'm Bob DeTomo.